The most dangerous person is the one who listens, thinks, and observes. Bruce Lee once said this, but he wasn't talking about martial arts. He was talking about something far more deadly, the subtle art of becoming invisible to yourself. Here's what nobody tells you. Every single day you're being trained to ignore the most important voice in your life, your own. And the price you're paying isn't just happiness, it's your very identity. Walk through any city, scroll through any social media feed, sit in any office, and you'll see the same phenomenon everywhere. Men who've become ghosts of themselves. They're physically present but spiritually absent. They speak but their words carry no weight. They move but without direction. They exist, but they don't truly live. Picture this. A successful businessman sits in his corner office, staring out at a city he's conquered professionally, yet feeling completely empty inside. He has everything he was told would make him happy. The career, the house, the recognition. But he can't shake the feeling that he's living someone else's life. He's 45 years old and can't remember the last time he made a decision based purely on what he wanted, not what he should want. This man isn't an exception. He's the rule. He represents millions of men who've achieved external success while losing internal connection. They've climbed every ladder, checked every box, met every expectation, only to discover that they've become strangers to themselves in the process. This isn't about motivation. This isn't about success. This is about something far more fundamental, something the ancient philosophers warned us about thousands of years ago, but we've forgotten in our rush toward comfort and conformity. The Stoics called it prosos, continuous, attention to the present moment and to your own inner state. But we've replaced this ancient practice with something far more dangerous. Constant attention to everyone else's expectations, everyone else's approval, everyone else's definition of who we should be. Marcus Aurelius, while ruling the vast Roman Empire, understood this danger better than any modern self-help guru. He wrote in his private journal, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." The most powerful man in the ancient world was warning himself about the very trap that captures most men today, the obsession with external validation. You see, there's a war happening inside every man. It's not the war between good and evil that religions talk about. It's not the war between success and failure that motivational speakers obsess over. It's the war between who you actually are and who you think you should be. And most men are losing this war without even knowing they're fighting it. The tragedy isn't that you're failing. The tragedy is that you're succeeding at becoming someone else entirely. You're becoming a perfect copy of what others expect, what society demands, what your fears tell you is safe. And with each day that passes, the real you becomes more and more distant, until one day you wake up and realize you can't remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Think about your childhood dreams, your natural interests, your instinctive reactions before you learned to suppress them. Remember the boy who asked why about everything, who had strong preferences, who didn't care what others thought about his curiosity or his passions. That boy is still inside you, but he's been buried under layers of social conditioning, professional expectations, and the relentless pressure to fit in. This is the ancient warning that's been echoing through history, ignored by generation after generation of men who thought they were too modern, too sophisticated, too busy to listen. But the warning wasn't meant for primitive minds. It was meant for minds exactly like yours, in times exactly like these, when the pressure to conform is strongest and the stakes for losing yourself are highest. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, wrote his most honest thoughts in a journal never meant to be published. In it, he revealed something that would shock most modern men. The Emperor of Rome was more concerned with conquering his own mind than conquering territories. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. He wrote, "But look around you. Every man you know is obsessed with exactly that, what others are saying, doing, thinking about them. This is where the deception begins. We've been taught that awareness means staying informed, staying connected, staying relevant. But the Stoics understood something we've forgotten. There's a difference between awareness and distraction. And most of what we call staying aware is actually elaborate self-deception. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not scrolling through your phone to stay informed. You're scrolling to avoid the silence where your real thoughts live. You're not networking to build relationships. You're networking to avoid the vulnerability of being genuinely known. You're not working late to achieve excellence. You're working late to avoid going home to yourself. Think about your daily routine. How much of it is actually your routine? How many of your thoughts are actually your thoughts? How many of your goals are actually your goals? If you're honest, and honesty is the first requirement of wisdom, you'll realize that most of your mental energy is spent processing other people's agendas, other people's opinions, other people's emergencies. The ancient Greeks had a concept called phantasia, the impressions that constantly flood our minds. They understood that most of these impressions aren't reality. They're interpretations, projections, fears, and desires dressed up as facts. But we've lost this distinction. We treat every thought as true, every feeling as important, every impulse as meaningful. Consider the modern man's relationship with his phone. He checks it 96 times per day, not because he's expecting important information, but because he's addicted to the dopamine hit of external validation. Each notification is a small escape from the present moment, a tiny rebellion against the discomfort of being alone with his own consciousness. This is why you feel exhausted without accomplishing anything meaningful. You're not living your life. You're reacting to it. You're not making decisions, you're making responses. You're not creating, you're consuming. And consumption, no matter how sophisticated, always leaves you empty. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, imagining loss to appreciate what you have. But we've reversed it. We imagine approval to tolerate who we're becoming. We fantasize about future validation to justify present compromise. We dream about eventual freedom to accept current servitude. The architecture of self-deception is elegant in its simplicity. Convince yourself that your cage is temporary, that your compromises are strategic, that your silence is wisdom. Tell yourself that you're being practical, not cowardly. Tell yourself that you're being patient, not passive. Tell yourself that you're being mature, not dead inside. Watch how this plays out in relationships. You say what you think others want to hear, not what you actually think. You pretend to enjoy activities that bore you because you're afraid of seeming difficult. You swallow your authentic reactions because you've learned that authenticity makes people uncomfortable. And slowly, over time, you become so skilled at this performance that you forget you're performing at all. The most insidious part of self-deception is that it feels like wisdom. It feels like emotional intelligence when you suppress your true feelings to keep others comfortable. It feels like maturity when you abandon your dreams to meet others' expectations. It feels like success when you optimize your life for external metrics rather than internal satisfaction. But the ancient warning remains: the unexamined life is not worth living. And examination requires more than thinking about your life. It requires thinking about your thinking, questioning your questions, and most importantly, recognizing the difference between what you've chosen and what's been chosen for you. Socrates spent his life demonstrating that most people who think they know something actually know nothing. But he wasn't being cruel, he was being kind. Because only when you realize you don't know who you are, can you begin the process of discovering who you might become. Epictetus was born a slave, but he became one of the freest men who ever lived. Not because his circumstances changed, though they did, but because he understood something that eluded his masters: the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. No one can hurt you without your permission, he taught. But we've created a world where we give our permission automatically, constantly, unconsciously. We've made our peace, our confidence, our very sense of self dependent on variables completely outside our control. Listen to how men talk today. Listen to yourself. How many of your sentences begin with "I have to," "I should," "I can't because"? or if only. How many of your worries are about things that haven't happened yet? How many of your regrets are about things you cannot change? How many of your frustrations are about people you cannot control? This is the price of unconscious living. You become a slave to circumstances, a puppet of other people's moods, a victim of your own unexamined assumptions. You wake up tired, not because you worked hard, but because you spent the night fighting battles that exist only in your mind. You go to sleep anxious, not because tomorrow is dangerous, but because you've forgotten the difference between possibility and probability. Consider the modern epidemic of anxiety. Most men today are anxious about things that will never happen, obsessed with outcomes they cannot control, and paralyzed by possibilities they cannot predict. They've forgotten that anxiety is not a response to danger. It's a response to the illusion of danger. And the illusion grows stronger the more disconnected you become from your own actual experience. The Stoics understood that suffering isn't caused by events. It's caused by our judgments about events. But we've been trained to focus on changing events instead of examining judgments. We've been taught to control outcomes instead of controlling responses. We've been conditioned to seek security instead of developing resilience. This is why successful men often feel empty. They've achieved everything they thought they wanted, but they've lost touch with why they wanted it. They've climbed the ladder, but they've forgotten to check if it's leaning against the right wall. They've won the game, but they've forgotten it was a game they never chose to play. Take the man who spends his 40s trying to impress people he doesn't even like with achievements that don't matter to him. He drives the right car, lives in the right neighborhood, sends his kids to the right schools, all while feeling increasingly disconnected from any sense of purpose or meaning. He's successful by every external measure, but internally, he's dying. The ancient warning isn't about avoiding failure. It's about avoiding success that costs you your soul. It's about recognizing that you can gain the whole world, but lose yourself in the process. It's about understanding that the ultimate tragedy isn't dying. It's living without ever having truly lived. Seneca, the advisor to emperors, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." But the waste he was talking about isn't just poor time management. It's the waste of attention, the waste of energy, the waste of presence. It's living in constant reaction instead of conscious action. Here's what unconscious living looks like in practice. You check your phone first thing in the morning, immediately filling your mind with other people's priorities before you've even connected with your own. You eat lunch while scrolling through social media, consuming both food and information without tasting either. You come home from work and immediately turn on the TV, avoiding the silence where your own thoughts might merge. You're not tired because you're working too hard. You're tired because you're working against yourself. You're not stressed because life is difficult. You're stressed because you're trying to control what cannot be controlled and ignoring what can be. You're not unhappy because you lack something. You're unhappy because you've forgotten who you are beneath all the roles you play. The price of unconscious living is paid in small increments. A compromise here, a suppressed feeling there, a dream postponed indefinitely. You tell yourself these are minor sacrifices, practical adjustments, mature decisions, but they accumulate like interest on a debt you didn't know you were taking on. And one day you wake up and realize you've been living someone else's life so long that you can't remember what your own life was supposed to feel like. You've been so busy meeting expectations that you've forgotten what you expected from yourself. You've been so focused on not failing that you've forgotten what succeeding would actually mean to you. The ancient philosophers understood that the unexamined life isn't just worthless, it's dangerous. Because when you're not conscious of your own choices, you're not making choices at all. You're simply following scripts written by others, playing roles assigned by a culture that profits from your compliance and confusion. Lao Tzu observed that he who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. But self-knowledge isn't a destination, it's a practice. And like all practices worth mastering, it requires discipline, patience, and the courage to see what you'd rather ignore. The return to authentic, Power begins with a simple recognition. You are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not your circumstances, and you are not your past. You are the awareness that observes all of these things. You are the consciousness that can choose how to respond to whatever arises. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't self-help. This is the hardest work you'll ever do, the work of waking up from the trance of unconscious living. It means questioning every assumption, examining every habit, and taking responsibility for every choice, even the choice to avoid choosing. But here's what authentic power actually looks like in practice. It's the man who can sit in silence without needing to fill with distractions. It's the man who can say no without explaining himself to death. It's the man who can be disliked without changing his behavior to win approval. It's the man who can fail without making his worth dependent on the outcome. Authentic power isn't about domination or control over others. It's about sovereignty over yourself. It's the ability to choose your response to any situation, regardless of what's happening around you. It's the freedom to act from your deepest values rather than your immediate fears. The Stoics practiced what they called the view from above, imagining yourself from a cosmic perspective to see your problems in proper proportion. But you don't need to imagine space. You just need to imagine time. In 100 years, every person who currently has power over your emotions will be dead. Every crisis that consumes your attention will be forgotten. Every approval you're seeking will be meaningless. But the character you build today, the wisdom you develop now, the integrity you practice in small moments, these will echo through eternity. Not because others will remember, but because you will have become someone worth remembering. This is where the real work begins. Developing the capacity to be present with whatever arises without immediately needing to fix it, change it, or escape from it. Most men have never learned to simply be with their own experience. They've learned to analyze it, judge it, compare it, or avoid it, but not to simply witness it without attachment. Start with this. For 5 minutes each morning, sit quietly and observe your thoughts without trying to control them. Don't try to think positive thoughts or eliminate negative ones. Just watch them arise and pass away like clouds in the sky. This simple practice will teach you more about yourself than years of external achievement. The ancient warning isn't about avoiding danger. It's about recognizing that the greatest danger isn't failure, rejection, or loss. The greatest danger is succeeding at becoming someone other than yourself. It's winning approval at the cost of authenticity. It's gaining security at the expense of growth. It's choosing comfort over consciousness. Authentic power manifests differently in different men, but it always includes certain qualities: the ability to be alone without being lonely, the capacity to speak truth without needing to be right, the strength to be vulnerable without being weak, and the wisdom to act from love rather than fear. Consider what your life would look like if you stopped trying to impress people and started trying to know yourself. What would you do with your time if you weren't constantly seeking external validation? What relationships would you choose if you weren't afraid of being alone? What work would you pursue if you weren't worried about other people's opinions? The path back to yourself isn't easy, but it's simple. Start paying attention. Start questioning. Start choosing consciously instead of reacting automatically. Start small, but start today. Because every day you postpone becoming who you truly are is a day you remain a stranger to yourself. The ancient philosophers left us a map, but they can't take the journey for us. The warning has been given. The wisdom has been preserved. The choice, as always, is yours. But understand this. Choosing authenticity means choosing difficulty. It means being willing to disappoint others in order to be true to yourself. It means facing the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. It means taking responsibility for your life in a way that most people never will. And yet, this is the only path to genuine satisfaction, real respect, and lasting peace. Everything else is just a sophisticated form of slavery. Comfortable, perhaps, but still slavery. The question isn't whether you're strong enough to choose authenticity. The question is whether you're brave enough to stop pretending that anything else will satisfy you, but choose quickly. Time is running out, and the person you're meant to become won't wait forever. The ancient warning echoes across centuries, and now it's calling your name. The only question left is, will you answer?